was early morning, but the day was already buzzing with its excitement. Your whole family was gathered together with all five Suarezes in their cozy living room. Today we're all making a trip out to a boardwalk set park. It was a regular enough outing for Derek's family, but it would be your first time going. The boardwalk was a few hours away, and it was even further than when setting out from Sunsetburg. That's why the adults decided on the meetup here at the Suarez's apartment instead of gathering at the boardwalk itself. It gave your moms a little break from driving, and everyone got their last chance to run for the bathroom. You would be leaving very soon. While you waited for the trip to officially start, you sat on the couch with your hands in your lap. For a few minutes now, you tried to keep track of what the group gathered around the kitchen counter were up to. Elizabeth, your moms, and Mrs. Suarez were all busy making preparations for what you could tell. Meanwhile, Mr. Suarez had his hands full rounding up his two youngest kids. It seemed that they were talking an anti-shoe stance that morning, and in Nicholas's case, he needed to be talked into wearing a shirt too. On the cushion next to you, Derek was pumped for what the boardwalk had to offer. He was rambling a mile a minute about all the fun stuff he couldn't wait to show you. You were excited about it. Bouncing your leg, you struggled to contain your energy. You were just as eager to experience everything he described. This journey was also the first time your and Derek's families were doing a big activity together. You couldn't believe it originally when the adults went through with organizing the trip.
Let's go.
Kids, come join us in the kitchen. It's time to pack your treat bags. Cool. Sliding off the couch, you didn't have the faintest idea what Mrs. Suarez meant, but you were summoned, and so you followed Derek's lead. He turned to say something over his shoulder. He guessed that line might have been confusing to a newcomer. The snack bags are what we do for larger trips. Me and my brothers, and you and Elizabeth too. We get to fill a little plastic baggie with any sweets and stuff you want. It's supposed to be for eating during the hour-long drive, but no one really cares when we snack. It's just so we have something if we need it. That's nice.
Same.
I think so too. It's great to have on hand. As you reached the kitchen, Elizabeth breezed past you with your moms following at a more relaxed pace. Derek raised a skeptical brow and pointed in her direction with his thumb. Doesn't she want a bag? Elizabeth stopped and spun around on her heel. Surprised, Derek pulled his hand back to his side. Elizabeth's lips curled into an all too pleased smirk.
What?
You heard Mrs. Suarez. She called for the kids to come. Ma shook her head at Elizabeth's taunting display. Your sister stepped forward and held up a zip bag that you hadn't noticed before. I already got mine while we were getting things set up for the rest of you. Her baggie was full of dried fruits and chocolate chips. She teasingly dangled it in your face and then in Derek's. Very mature, Elizabeth. You're not one of the kids at all. You snickered at her. Elizabeth withdrew her treat bag. She watched you suspiciously while you composed yourself. It's nice to see you excited about snack time again. She snorted and gave you the most indignant stare. Ma leaned into Mom, trying to stifle her giggles. Everyone's gotta eat. After that, she left the kitchen and plopped down in your old spot on the couch. Your mom's joined her, putting Elizabeth in the middle. Ma comfortingly patted Elizabeth's leg. Glancing back towards the kitchen, George and Nicholas were finally dressed and they dashed ahead of you. They excitedly crowded around their mom's legs. Now don't forget that the bag actually has to be able to close for it to count. She began passing out the baggies to her two youngest, and then Mrs. Suarez turned to you and winked. That's my one rule for the treat bags, but other than that, feel free to go crazy. Nicholas and George took that as their cue to rush up to the counter lined with tasty options and started stuffing their bags. Mrs. Suarez handed you and Derek your own plastic baggies. Now that it was in your hand, you realized that it was the smallest zip bag size. There was no way that you were going to get a little bit of everything. From my experience, you can fit about 4 handfuls of stuff before it starts getting too tough to close. With a determined nod, you tried to get a good look at the snack options from where you stood. You were gonna have to strategize how to put your baggie together. The younger boys swiftly finished selecting their road trip treats. George's bag closed easily, while Nicholas's was proving a challenge to squeeze shut. The plastic was ballooned out on the sides, entirely full of cookies and candy. His brow pinched as he struggled with the zip. To everyone's surprise, Nicholas got it to seal, and he proudly held the bag up for his mom's inspection. Impressed, she nodded. Don't forget to take a water bottle too. We don't want to lose anyone to dehydration today. The two boys held their prizes tightly and grabbed the water bottle off the edge of the counter on their way out of the kitchen. It was your turn now at the buffet, and the spread was delicious. Wow. Enjoy! Humming happily, you ran your hand across the side of the plastic baggie. You were grateful for your help, and you proudly showed it to Derek. He gave you a thumbs up. Derek leaned across the counter for the water bottles. He slid one over for you to take and grabbed one for himself too. Okay, I'll close up the packs then. We can leave this out here for now.
Is that fine?
We don't have any more time to lose. Are we all ready? Several voices called back, answering yes. Mrs. Suarez raised an eyebrow and walked out of the kitchen. No one needs to go potty? No,
No.
I don't have to go potty.
Good.
Good. Anyone have questions before we go? She put her hands on her hips and glanced around the apartment. Mr. Suarez raised his hand just as he caught her eye. I'd like to know how we will arrange the rides. There's room for 5 in the back of our car and room for 3 in Madison's car.
What do you think?
There is room to switch who is bringing who, if there's a want for it. Oh, I'm glad you brought that up. Elizabeth and Faye are welcome to ride with us, or Derek can feel free to go with Pamela and Noelani. Nicholas and George are staying in our van, though. Frustrated, both smaller boys pouted at their exclusion. George's jaw clenched as he crossed his arms. I'm not a baby. Why do I gotta stay in the van? I'm not a baby. Nicholas, you know you still need a booster seat. We can't put that in their car. Mr. Suarez chuckled at Nicholas's angry grumbling as he passed by into the kitchen, aiming to pick at the remaining snacks. Mrs. Suarez sighed in a tickled but still a long-suffering way. Dad and I need you there to stay awake for such a long drive. Can you two please keep us company on the car ride? Releasing a deep breath, George nodded. He knew this wasn't the day his mom was going to relent. Nicholas, on the other hand, continued to pout. Okay, Mom. Well, what do you think, Granny?
That's fine.
Either way is fine with me. It's up to the kids to decide which they'd prefer. I'll stick with Mom's. She then curiously shifted her attention to you. The corner of her mouth pulled into a smirk because she knew that you and your friend were the ones that whole decision was for. Derek leaned in close to you, cupping a hand to the side of his mouth so only you could hear him. Faye, what are you thinking? Well, I'm gonna choose this because I don't want Derek to look after his brothers all the time. Derek should ride with us, well, if he's alright with that. Your mom's reassuring nods gave you the confidence to find out what Derek thought about your bold statement. His skin seemed a shade pinker, but he scratched the back of his neck and beamed. Yeah, that'd be awesome. His delighted faltered as Nicholas darted across the room to him. He silently stared with big sad eyes.
It's okay.
Sorry, Nickel. We'll be back together at the boardwalk real soon. I promise. Promise. Derek patted the top of his brother's head, and the boy sighed. There was still a sourness clinging to his expression, but he didn't seem as defeated anymore. Okay, now that that's settled, we'll see you there. Oh, hold on, one last thing. Mrs. Suarez went over to your mom's and quickly went into some last-minute advice on the directions. While you waited, you noticed out of the corner of your eye that Mr. Suarez had moved on from nibbling at the snacks. Instead, you caught him passing George and Nicholas an extra cookie each. Genuine cheer came back to both of their expressions. They were so thrilled about the secret cookies that Nicholas's bitterness over the car ride and George's frustration over being babied were both sweetened out. And that was that. Snacks and drinks were set. No one needed to go potty. The rides were arranged. Directions were obtained. And it was finally time to get the trip started. The two families left the condo behind, chattering with eagerness with the day's activities. At the parking lot, the group split up to get into their different cars. This is gonna be fun. Elizabeth automatically went to claim her usual seat, but you stopped her. She pouted but climbed back out and impatiently tapped her foot on the ground. What? Did you forget we have company? On autopilot, Ma slid behind the steering wheel with ease and Mom hopped into the front seat. It wasn't until they were buckled in that they both realized the back seat was oddly still empty. What's the holdup? We have to decide the seats.
No worries.
Don't worry about that. The middle's calling my name. I'm the third wheel anyways. Chewing at your bottom lip, there wasn't any more time left to lose, so you didn't try to argue with him. Elizabeth happily climbed into the car and took her usual spot. This worked out perfectly. Derek settled into his chosen spot and sat up perfectly straight. You climbed in after him, appreciative that you and your sister ended up in your usual places at opposite ends of the car. Are we all ready now? We're buckled. Roger that. We'll have you all free and having fun in no time. Thanks for letting me join for the ride. That's no trouble at all. We love to have you here as a guest. The second Ma was done pulling the car out, a wide grin hooked her lips. Excitedly, she shimmied her shoulders as she drove. I read about our destination recently, and it sounded just lovely. I'm so happy we're doing this today. That's an understatement if I've ever heard one. Nanny studied up on this place like it was her job. Mom teasingly twisted to deliver that last part to the three of you in the back directly. Giggling, Ma shrugged. Can you blame me? I don't want to miss anything. I understand that. There's just so much fun to see and do, and it's all packed into that one place. That's impressive. It'll be a good day then. Well, I don't want any spoilers. I want to see what's there when we get there.
There.
Alright, Elizabeth, I won't say a thing. Does anyone want music? Depends on whose turn it is to pick. How about we let Derek have the turn? Oh, that's nice of you, Mrs. Madison. Elizabeth gasped in surprise, and Derek awkwardly fiddled with his fingers in his lap. She childishly stuck her tongue out, but he wasn't bothered by her antics at all. Derek shrugged it off and thought hard about how he should answer. He wasn't going to squander this opportunity. Pressing his mouth into a hard line, Derek peeked over in your direction. Oh. You gave him a tiny wave and he leaned closer, whispering like you two were having a team huddle. I'm not sure what call to make. What'd be good to do here? Seriously, anything is okay. Derek took a deep breath and exhaled slowly through his nose. He looked forward, confidently catching your mom's eye, and gave his final answer. Could we listen to something contemporary? Yes, we can. Quietly chuckling to herself, Elizabeth smirked at everything working out for her. She settled in for a pleasant ride. Elizabeth then pulled out her baggie of snacks and popped a few cranberries in her mouth. She grabbed another handful to nibble at while you thought about your own baggie. You saved all your snacks for later. Resting your head back, you had a hunch that these snacks would be a lifesaver once your stomach started growling later. You noticed that Derek didn't touch his zip bag of snacks at all. He continued to twiddle his fingers and sit quietly. The rest of the ride went by with comfortable conversation rolling between the group of you, and all the while the music played on. Both families pulled into the parking lot, and the kids excitedly bounced out of the cars. The parents cheerfully waved at each other as the groups closed for the distance between them. Derek. Next to you, Derek braced for impact as his younger brother bolted straight ahead, aiming right for him. Over the moon to be reunited, Nicholas tightly wrapped himself around his big brother. "Hey, I missed you too." "Missed you." Derek managed to entangle his sibling's limb enough so he could bend down and give Nicholas a hug. The 6-year-old eventually released his legs in full so they could walk hand in hand back to their family. With everyone regrouped, the families strolled onto the boardwalk. Your eyes widened. The place was even more amazing than you'd imagined. It was like you stepped into a bright world of color. There were shops displaying various beach towels and boogie boards decorated with either popular cartoon characters or tropical flowers. Clothing stalls had racks of sundresses, cover-ups, and swimwear in every pattern imaginable. Ahead, you couldn't make out the colorful tufts of stuffed animals from the prize boards. Darts, ring toss, skee ball, and more waited further down the boardwalk. Music filled the air, but when you listened closely, you could make out so much more. There were various cheers and shouts of victory, joy, and fear. The screams had to be coming from the massive wooden roller coaster that towered beyond the stalls. From what you could tell already, this boardwalk was easily 5 times the scale of the entire shopping street in Sunsetburg. You loved it. It was exhilarating, taking the scoop of the boardwalk in. You were going to implode if you didn't start exploring